You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Bri and Thais, episode number 15.
Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Bri Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
A movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
All right, ladies and gent, the one gent that listens to our podcast.
Good morning, Amplifiers.
It's Thais and Bri.
Bri.
I announced your name.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome. We are today talking about productivity, creativity, and work-life balance as entrepreneurs. So this is an entrepreneur-based podcast, especially, not especially, but for those of you listening who are entrepreneurs or who are wannabepreneurs, this is going to be a really amazing podcast for you because we're going to break down some productivity stuff. We're going to talk about creativity and how to make sure that you have space in your life for creativity and the secret to creativity that no one tells you. And, and yeah, work-life balance. And what the fuck does that look like when you're an entrepreneur?
I don't understand the words that are coming out of your mouth right now.
So where do we want to begin in this very myriad of amazing conversation topics?
Let's start with work-life balance, because I feel like that's such a huge conversation for entrepreneurs all the time.
Yeah, because burnout is a real thing, and we see it and we experience it. And we know that burnout happens because we push ourselves too hard for too long. And Miss Bri Seeley here has a little stuffy nose today.
Bri Seeley here has a little sinus infection.
Yeah, and I was sick a couple weeks ago because of burnout, because our mind and what we want to achieve and create and do gets way ahead of our very grounded body, who needs a lot of space and self-care practices. And it's normal that when you experience growth that there's also a retraction phase, but a lot of times we don't honor that retraction, or we don't know how to, or you know what I mean? It's not like we're to blame because we didn't do it. It's just that sometimes we don't know how. And then what happens? We get sick, or we self-sabotage, or, we get into a fight with somebody. I mean, these are very real things that happen when we don't practice balance. So what does balance look like for an entrepreneur? Do you have the answers? Do you have all the answers, Bri?
Of course I have all the answers.
Share all the answers.
Do you know who you're talking to? My biggest thing, people always ask me how I do it all.
How do you do it all?
I run like 3 businesses, and
Bri's badass. Not only does she run 3 businesses, but she's efficient as fuck. It's amazing. I'll wake up and she'll be like, yeah, I did this. I'm like, Bri, it's 7 a.m. She's like, yeah, I've been up since 2 a.m. No, I'm just kidding.
Bullshit.
I'm exaggerating. But she gets a lot of things done. So actually, I think Bri is the perfect person to talk to about this. How do you get everything done?
So I think there's a few things. The first one is, of course, my morning routine, which I talk about all the fucking time, because for me, it's about just setting up my energy and getting centered and grounded, because if I'm operating from a place that's disconnected or just kind of frantic or just really not grounded, then I don't feel like I do my best work.
Yeah.
So it's really important for me, and of course my morning routine looks different every day. Like today with me being sick.
Yeah.
I allowed myself to sleep in, and then instead of getting up and doing yoga and meditating and reading and journaling and all the things, like I just allowed myself to lay in bed with my cats for an hour.
Yeah.
And just really hang out and take care of myself. So morning routine is one of them. And then the other one is really prioritization.
Well, let's pause there, because one of the things about morning routine that I think is important for us to talk about is that it sets up your energy for the day. And here's the thing about being an entrepreneur. I remember so many times in my corporate job, I would just barely show up all day. I was, pretend to be on Facebook or be on Facebook until a coworker walked by, and then I would pretend to be working. And thank God I'm not working there anymore, or else I'd probably be fired for sharing this. But, my productivity was not tied to my income. And that's the biggest difference between corporate America, unless you're in sales, and then I totally get that commission structure. But for the most part, you get to show up, and no matter what you do that day, you end up getting a paycheck. And the problem with entrepreneurialism, or not the problem, but the gift, the challenge, the difference is that entrepreneurialism, how you show up, determines how much money you make. And this is something that we often forget when we show up like crap and we just keep working like crap. And then we wonder why we're getting crap results. It's because how you do something, what energy you do it in, is important. It's important when you're doing the type of work that is of service to the world. I mean, there's a big difference if I were to show up in a client session not really engaged versus being fully engaged. Someone's life is on the line. Their transformation is on the line based on whether or not I show up. And so this is so important that Bri mentioned. And whatever that looks like for you, it's important that you do the things that bring your energy levels up to where you want them to be. I have like 5 things. Like, step 1, if my energy isn't where I want it to be, I will tap. I'll do EFT. If that doesn't work, then I'll take a pleasure break and go walk my dog. If that doesn't work, then I call it quits for the day and I go to the beach. If that doesn't work, then I, will call up a friend and spend the day with them. And if that doesn't work, I fucking go on vacation, and I really commit to shutting down the computer, even if it's a staycation. But it gets progressively more and more severe depending on whether or not I'm really able to align my energy with the work that I'm meant to do in the world.
But for me, like, part of why I do my morning routine is so I don't get to that like DEFCON 5 space that Thais was talking about. So if I spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours every morning, like resetting my energy every single day consistently, then I don't get to that place of burnout.
Yeah. And it, checking yourself periodically throughout the day. How am I feeling right now? And what I'm doing feeling good right now? If it's not feeling good and it's something I have to do, how can I make it feel good? What do I need to do to infuse more pleasure and joy into what I'm doing right now?
Yeah.
Because that matters. It matters.
So I think this, like I was saying, the second part for me is about prioritization. So on any given day, we could all have a to-do list of 100 different things. But the reality is, as entrepreneurs, that's not feasible, and we're only one person. So it's really prioritizing what's of most benefit, what is going to move the needle forward significantly in my business today, and where do I really feel best when I'm working. And so that's kind of my measure of, how my day plays out.
Yeah.
And what I focus on. And
yeah, usually the things that we need to do, the things that are uncomfortable, that moves the needle forward, that would get us a spot on TV, that would put us out there in a big way, those things we tend to avoid doing. We put off till the very last thing. And we do the smaller tasks first.
The easy ones.
The easy ones. I'll just send this email, or, I'll just do this little thing first. The thing is, when you're fresh in the morning, that's usually when you're most inspired and most energetic to do the big tasks that will move you forward, versus waiting until the end of the day when you're burnt out and you're wanting a break and you've been in front of your computer for 8 hours. That's not the best time to do the type of work that will inspire your business, and inspire you to move forward. And so look to see, how are you spending your time? What are you spending your time doing?
What are you focusing on?
And is what you're doing working? Okay, let's talk about that one a little bit more.
Yeah, so I have kind of a weekly check-in with myself about looking back and looking forward. So looking back on the week, what worked this week, what didn't work this week. Am I committed to doing something new if things aren't working? And then looking forward and saying, all right, so if this worked this week, am I willing to do it again? Am I willing to not do the things that didn't work? Blah, blah, blah.
Well, that's the big one. The big one is, are you okay with stopping doing the things that are not working? And there's still times when I'm not willing. I'm not willing to stop doing the things that aren't working because I think I need to be doing them. And this has been a serious gut check for me, which is, why are you spending time doing things that aren't working, thinking that it should somehow work? If it's not working, you have to either stop doing it or recalibrate, right? So you got to look at what you're doing honestly. Are you wasting your time? What are you wasting your time on? Are you spending 3 hours on Facebook trying to figure out the right Facebook post? Is that worth your time?
I feel like this segues really well into one other thing I want to mention.
Yeah, go for it.
So, speaking of social media and how much time we all fucking spend on it, and kind of segueing a little bit into productivity, one of the ways that I keep my energy focused during the day and stay on top of my shit is that I turned off all the notifications on my phone.
Mm.
I get the only things that come up on my phone are Hootsuite, because I have to, launch social media stuff, and then text messages and phone calls. The rest, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of those things do not pop up on my phone. I don't get notifications about them. I don't get dings. I don't get like nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. I turned off all of my notifications on my phone because what I found was my phone would ding when I got an email, and it would ding when I got a Facebook, and it would ding when I got an Instagram, and all these things. And every time it happened, it was pulling my attention away from whatever I was focusing on.
Yeah, you're letting other people dictate your priority.
Yeah, and especially at the time, I had this publicist who like needed my attention all the time, and she needed me to like respond to her immediately. It was like this thing. And when I started laying boundaries down about like, this is my time, I'm the one running my business, I need to be focused, all of that stuff. It was such a freedom. Like it brought about such a sense of freedom, and like really catapulted me to the next level because I wasn't just constantly being distracted all fucking day long.
Yeah. I definitely have turned off my notifications. I've deleted the Facebook app. Well, I used to have my Facebook app deleted. Now I have to have it for Facebook Live. Yeah, but I try to remove as much of that distraction stuff as possible, because when you're doing a creative work, you need to be in the flow, you need to be in the zone, and anything that pulls you out of the zone will only hurt you. One of the things that Bri and I have both done is we've downloaded a Chrome extension called Newsfeed Eradicator, and we'll add this to the show notes. But Newsfeed Eradicator removes your newsfeed. So when you go on Facebook, you don't see other people's stuff. Now, you still see people, if you go to their specific page, you'll see all of their stuff. You'll still see group feed, but you don't see your newsfeed, and that has been such a time saver for me. The other thing I used to do, there's an app, a Facebook thing, not a Facebook thing. What am I saying? What words am I using?
Is it self-control?
No.
Oh,
no.
I can talk about that one.
There is a website called Unroll Me, and it curates all of your emails and all of the emails that you subscribed to and adds it to the website as opposed to your inbox. So it removes it from your inbox. I used to do this, and then I was like, fuck this. Why am I still subscribed to 500 fucking other people's newsletters? And I went through and I unsubscribed all of them except for like 5. Why? Why am I subscribing to everyone's shit? Like, is that really adding to my life? No, it's putting the power of other people's knowledge onto them, right? So like, I lose my power when I'm spending an hour a day going through my bajillion emails. So I did that, and that was life-changing.
Another really great tool, we just talked about this at the Amplified dinner, is called self-control. And it's clearly for people that have none. And it's an app that you download on your laptop, and you put in whatever websites you want to be banned from for a certain period of time. So you could put in like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. And then you set a timer, and it prevents you from going to those websites for X amount of time. The caveat is you actually have to set it. So in the like 3 years I've had it on my laptop, I think I've actually used it once.
Yep, same.
So you actually have to set it, and then you can still have your phone.
There's ways to cheat. I mean, The point of the matter is it becomes a conversation with what is your priority?
Yeah.
What are you spending your time on? And is this really adding value to your business? And as entrepreneurs, we have a lot of freedom. And that... Oh, pen down. We have a lot of freedom, and freedom means that we get to not show up if we want, or we get to show up if we want, and we have to create systems and structures in place purposefully to make sure that we are supporting ourselves. And so for me, it means taking breaks throughout the day. And luckily now I have a little Chewy, little puppy, who reminds me to go outside. And that's been so good for me, to get off of the computer, to get back outside to nature, to the trees and the breeze and the beautiful LA weather, and gets me disconnected from the computer so I can go back to, okay, what have I been spending my morning doing? Is this really adding value to my business? Where do I need to recalibrate? Do not take what you do for granted. Question everything. Question everything. I can't say it enough. Question everything. Question it. What are you doing with your time? And is it adding value? most of the times, unfortunately. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to mention and talk about is what does a day in the life of Bri and Thais look like? And the reason why I want to talk about it is because, one, this is one of the questions that we received in our monthly mastermind call, or not mastermind,
Q&A call
Q&A
with our
call.
members.
Yeah, we have a Q&A call for our coterie members, the members that are in our Amplify Collective. And one of the questions is, so what does it look like in your daily life? How do you show up every day? And Bri, why don't you go first? I mean, beyond the 5-hour morning practice you have.
It's not 5 hours.
Okay, it's 10 hours.
So I usually have, like, Mondays are dedicated for Thais and I. We do our CEO meetings, we do our podcasting, we do our videos, we do all sorts of stuff on Mondays together. So it usually involves us being together in one form or another. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right now we have interns. And so I'm in my office overseeing them and working on my book and, getting done all of the important tasks that I need to get done. And then Fridays are usually my days to take appointments or work from home. So I have kind of a consistent routine. I'm a little bit a creature of habit. So having my week kind of set out similarly every single week really helps me. And then for the most part, I work from 9 to 4, 9 to 5, depending on the day. We'll take breaks in the middle for lunch. I try to have lunch on my rooftop as much as I can because, I fucking live in LA and why not? Um, and then my evenings just vary. Like, there's some evenings, I teach a class tonight and I teach a class tomorrow night, and I date and hang out with friends.
Bri does a lot of things.
Workshops and I don't know, it depends on the week. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how some weeks I have things scheduled every single night, and then it's almost like every other week I have nothing on my calendar for a week. So it just depends.
I want to add something before I share my daily thing, and it's something that just popped into my mind, and it's this idea that we hear around a lot in entrepreneurial land about the 20-hour work week and about working on a beach and playing volleyball, and we have this real thirst to not be in our business while simultaneously making money, right? Like, I hear it a lot in the entrepreneurial world. Like, how do you make 6 figures by only showing up 1 hour a week? And I want to tell you this right now. If that's your goal in life, that's not a fucking good goal. Yeah. Your goal should not be, how can you cop out as much as possible while making money? If you want to be of service to the world, you're going to have to show up. And sometimes that looks like putting in hours. And sometimes it doesn't. But it does not mean that you get to think about your life in terms of how little can you do for how much you get to gain. Like, that's not really showing up for yourself. And that's not really showing up for a business that you're passionate about. Why would I want to create a life where I'm not fully invested in what I'm doing? If this is my passion, if this is my purpose, if this is what I feel called to do, I am going to put in the time. And that can look differently in different days. Sometimes it's 2 hours. Sometimes it's 10 hours. I allow the flow of my business to move through me. And I'm not scared of the hours required to build a business, because it's going to take fucking work. It takes work to create a business. And whatever you have to do in your business is what you're gonna have to do in your business.
Yeah, so my question for people that say that they only want to work 10 hours a week or whatever and make 6 figures is, if that's your goal, why the fuck are you doing what you're doing? Because clearly you don't enjoy it. If you really truly loved what you were doing, you would want to do it way more than 10 hours. You would want to provide maximum value to the world. So if that's your goal, is to only work, a few hours a week or whatever, maybe look at where you're at, and is it really something that you're supposed to be doing? Are you living your calling? Because for me, yes, I work way more than 10 hours a week and I love it. And I'm starting to build a thing where I can do it from anywhere. So, when I go to Bali in December, I'm going to be working while I'm there, and I'm actually excited about it. Like, I want to be serving my clients while I'm in paradise. Like, that sounds like the best fucking deal ever to me.
Oh, and you got to choose what feels good for you. Like, maybe working while on your quote unquote vacation doesn't feel good to you. So what structures do you need to create to make that happen for yourself? And are you using, your desire for this orgasmic life of not really showing up and not really working as an excuse to cop out from the work that's required? And I think the reason why this is so important for me to address is because I see too many people say that creating a business is easy. 10 steps, you have a 6-figure business, and you can travel all over the world.
All of those
and that's an illusion.
Facebook ads.
Yeah, it's an illusion. It doesn't work that way. That's not how life is, unfortunately and fortunately. Because if you want to create something that's 6 figures and multi-million-dollar and $1 billion empire, and that's your true dream, it's going to happen for you because you're going to show up and you're going to do the effort and work required. And the people that are only doing it so that they can work 10 hours a day and not really have to show up, those people aren't going to last long because they're not doing it for the right reasons. So anyway, little tangent there. But I want to get back to what does it look like for my ideal life, like my ideal day, like what does my day look like? And it depends every single day. But I usually wake up at 6:30 now because my puppy makes me take him on a walk every morning. And it's actually becoming my favorite time of the day. I'm outside, I'm walking, I'm feeling the LA air. I'm getting ideas for what I want to do that day. And then I look at my schedule and I look at what's coming up for me in the week. I do this every Sunday night. I schedule in my yoga classes that I want to attend. I schedule in my appointments. Mondays, like Bri said, are my CEO days with Bri. We do podcasts, we do video, we do a lot of work together. Tuesday are my client days, so that's when I have my client sessions. I only have my clients sessions on Tuesday, so those are my Tuesdays. Wednesday I usually go into downtown and work with Bri, whether that's on Amplify stuff or in my business. And then Thursday I work from home, and that's usually when I do my business and my newsletter and whatever needs to be done. And then Friday is actually a pretty light day. It's usually my reflective day. I like to go to yoga in the morning. I come home, I look at my money, I check in with my money every week to make sure that it's all good and I'm feeling good about my income and what's coming in and what's coming out. And I usually reflect the week and make sure that everything that I wanted to get done is done. And if not, that's usually taken care of, or I push it to the next week. And yeah, I check in with myself. What did I do that worked and what didn't work? And am I committed to spending time doing what works?
So, Thais, one of my favorite women, is joining us in just a minute. Did you know that Miss Jaclyn Mullen and I actually met on Twitter?
I think I have heard the story, and I am excited to learn more about how that unfolded. I love Jaclyn so much. Hi, Jaclyn.
Ladies, I love you both. Thank you so much for having me on here today. And yeah, Bri and I, ironically, living in Los Angeles, but it took Twitter to connect us for sure.
I love it. But it kind of totally goes along with Jaclyn's vibe. So let me tell you a little bit more about her. Jaclyn is a performing artist by trade and an entrepreneur by experience.
Oh, I really like that.
For the past 6 years, she's had the great honor of using the internet to meet other bold movers and shakers and makers in the world and advise, coach, and mentor them on the risky yet rewarding endeavor of launching a brand new business themselves. Jaclyn is an alumni of the University of Miami and the Tory Burch Goldman Sachs Small Business Program. She's also an instructor for General Assembly. And when she's not busy teaching, writing, networking, or volunteering her time for causes close to her heart, she can be found singing in her kitchen while cooking something delicious that will likely end up on Instagram. That's
I love
so
that.
you, Jaclyn.
That is so you. And also, I clearly need to be invited over for you to make me something delicious.
Absolutely. Both of you, I'm totally game for that, for sure.
I love it. So the question we like to lead off the interview is, what does it look like for you, Jaclyn, to live an amplified life?
Well, given my background in music and performing arts, I love this question first. Given like the meaning or the many meanings, if you will, of amplify, like you could think of amplify as like a speaker or something that's making things louder. You could think of amplify as just like this growth. And for me to really, be living an amplified life, it means that I'm definitely listening to my heart. Listening to my heart, not listening to fears, not listening to outside influences, but truly listening to my heart and taking action in alignment with that heart. And I think it also means forgiving myself. I think that's important for us all to remember. Sometimes we might listen to our heart and end up doing something that doesn't pan out the way we want or whatever. And being able to like really forgive yourself on a daily basis means I'm living an amplified life. I would also say helping others while honoring myself is really important. And last but not least, my entrepreneurial endeavors and work are really important to me, but so are my family and my friends. And living an amplified life means that I am not sacrificing the precious time that I have here on this earth for the sake of just working and being busy, but that I'm also being a good daughter, a good friend, a good aunt. And that's really what it means to me to be living an amplified life, to have gratitude every day for all of those things.
That's really beautiful. And I think the last point that you mentioned is something that you do really well in the world.
Agreed.
I know that you are a very quote unquote busy person and you do a lot in the world and you serve your clients super powerfully and your students and all of that stuff. And yet, when my birthday came up, Jaclyn was very, very purposeful about saying, I can't come to your birthday drinks event, but I want to take you to do this instead. And she made time for me. And I think that's a really powerful thing to be able to say that you're not too busy for the people that you love in your life. And that's something that I really respect and honor in you. So
I appreciate that. I mean, I think it's something in this digital day and age, right? We forget the fact that while we're all connected through our phones and our computers and, texts, if you will, that there is still something to be said about that face-to-face interaction. There is still something to be said about picking up the phone and actually making a phone call as opposed to just relying on your digital relationships. And, when all's said and done, I think it's for me just like quality of relationships with the people I have around me, not necessarily quantity, but what's the quality? Why am I working so hard? Why are we all working so hard? It's not to not be able to enjoy and breathe when we're with people and be present. It's a matter to really be able to laugh, cry, or even collaborate and come together to use our collective brain power to do something better. Like you, me, and Thais have always been able to do. Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's so poignant and beautiful because I think when, we're all three of us are entrepreneurs, and when we can get so passionate and caught up by our profession and what we're doing, and we can get so obsessed with the work that we forget that that's not ultimately what life is about. And I know that we preach a lot not to show up as what you do but who you are, but there's a difference between showing up with what you do, who you are, and then making sure that you're also infusing balance into your life so that you are also not spending 95% of your day working and then sleep and then working again. So I love that you are bringing this to light and making sure that our listeners are understanding that it's so important for us to make time for people and things that matter.
Well, I think too, what happened was when I first started working for myself, that was not my philosophy. And it wasn't an intentional thing where I was like, oh, I'm just going to work all the time. But, when you go from having a steady paycheck to working for yourself, all of a sudden the reality sets in that, you have to make money. And I had some savings when I started my own endeavor, but I distinctively remember 5 or 6 years ago, blocking my phone from ringing, or just literally waking up in the morning at 6, 7 a.m. and having my cup of coffee and starting work in my pajamas. And I had a lot of different clients that I was consulting for and doing a lot of social media marketing and community management for the time. And every single hour and minute of my day was accounted for up until about 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And my mom was trying to get in touch with me one day. And she was saying to me, I'm like, I can't talk right now. Don't you understand? I'm working. And she was like, okay, pause. First of all, I'm your mother. I gave birth to you. Don't talk to me like that. And she's like, second of all, your job is not going to be there to hold your hand when something happens to you. Your job is not going to be there for you when you go through heartbreak or you have devastation. You kind of need to take a look at where your priorities are. And it was so hard. It has been such a huge transition to let go. I think of maybe what was some fear and being able to trust that the universe, being able to really say that I could work smarter and be okay with being a hard worker, but being a hard worker isn't necessarily, you don't need a gold medal in that. You know what I mean? What you need, you don't need a gold medal in anything, but really what it boils down to is quality of your life, you know? And so this has been a major transition, ladies. Like, I'm pinching myself. Like, I can't even believe these words are coming out of my mouth.
And just the other day, my mom, I catch myself hustling a lot. I catch myself because this is my first year as a full-time entrepreneur. I've been in business for 4 years, but this past year, I'm getting into my 1 year anniversary. And I still find myself, hustling a lot. And my mom says, Thais, you're growing a business. When are you going to make it fulfilling? And
I love that.
That felt like that hit my heart. Like, when am I going to make my life fulfilling? Because hustling and, working hard and cutting people out of your life because of what you're working on and what you have to do is not fulfilling. Mm-hmm. And what's even the fucking point of doing this entrepreneurial shit, which is something that we are all passionate about and we chose? Why are we doing it then if we're worse to ourselves than when we were working in the corporate world?
You're right.
And I like to look at too, like, what are you going to remember about your life?
Yeah.
So like, the day that Jaclyn took me to celebrate my birthday a few days early, I remember 0 things about that day. Like, I can't tell you what I did after, but Jaclyn took me to a 6 a.m. dance party. And I swear to you that I will never forget that morning. I will never forget being so tired, trying to find parking in Hollywood of all places, and meeting Jaclyn there in like hot pink leggings and dancing the day away or the morning away. And like, that's the kind of stuff that's important in life. It's those connections. It's that community. It's the heart and the laughter and the movement and the fun, because the rest of the day, like, I have no idea what I did. And that's not the stuff that we'll remember. We won't remember sitting at our desks, toiling the hours away and like working so hard. We remember the things that really truly impact our hearts.
Well, and that you bring up a good point, because it's like the reason why you create something like a collective, if you will, Amplify, is that balance is the key, and being able to share with other people who are doing what you're doing, not only for the purposes of accountability. Hey, am I able to step away from the computer? Am I able, even if it's just a 30 or 45-minute break, am I able to go to a 6 a.m. dance party to kick off my day and then go do my work? But also for the purposes of, here's what I've got going on in my head. Here's what I've got going on in my heart. Here's what I've got going on in my business. And the 3 of us, whenever we've sat down, we've had conversations that touch on each of those things. Mm-hmm. And it's because we're like willing to be, real with each other. It's because we're willing to at least share, and we trust one another's opinions in trying to figure out solutions in each of those areas. I want to emphasize that as entrepreneurs, it is important for us to get feedback from our fellow girl bosses. Thais, what did you say the other day? You're like, I don't want to be a girl boss. I just want to be a boss. But when we're all doing this on a daily basis, we're all learning things that we do really well that work. We're learning mistakes. And when we share that, in addition to what's going on in our head and our heart, like, I think that that's really what this entrepreneurship stuff is all about. Like, being amplified in all those areas of your life, not just 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is so powerful. And I know that so many of the listeners are entrepreneurs who are seeking that balance and who are seeking to find more fulfillment and joy and pleasure breaks and whatever else in their lives. So tell us, Jaclyn, what's like a system for success that you've put in place to make sure that you have found kind of that flow and that balance between the work and the play?
Well, first of all, I love that you asked this question, because number one, as a performing artist, the word system, used to be something that I would be like, ooh. Nowadays, system is my favorite word in my vocabulary. I spoke on a conference years ago at Social Media Week, and I heard one of the top leading like improv teachers in LA say that creativity thrives in structure, not in chaos. And a lot of times we think if we want to be free, if we want to be creative, we don't need a system or a structure. And that is not necessarily true. So once I heard that quote years ago, all of a sudden I was like, a light bulb went off. I need a system. That's what's missing for me. So believe it or not, one of the first tools in my system is my calendar. I have both like a written planner that I use and my iPhone calendar.
Me too.
Synced with Gmail. Woo, woo. I mean, the more visual you can have this stuff, the better. And then I also have these like super cute, like even weekly sheets. So for me, because I'm so visual and so creative, having it in like the bird's eye view of like, here's what's going on for the month, like work wise, networking wise, unnetworking wise, exercise wise is awesome. But sometimes I might just see that stuff in my calendar and forget about it. I need these like weekly tear sheets. So the one that I'm looking at right now is literally like one piece of paper, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So the calendar is big. The other thing is I'm a student of The Artist's Way. For those of you who may not have read that book yet, I cannot recommend it enough.
We'll add it to our show notes.
Yeah, Julia Cameron's Artist's Way. And she basically says everybody's creative. So she encourages you to have an artist date once per week. So I know that like being a business owner and an entrepreneur, I'm going to have a pretty heavy workload for the week. I need to schedule in something creative that is like a non-negotiable for me. And typically that's my cooking. That's why this whole cooking thing has become so big for me lately, whether baking or making food. So I would say find something that it doesn't have to be that you go out and like paint a canvas. It could be that you go on your weekly run and you run a different route. You know, try to switch things up in your life so that you have some structure and you have some routine, but that you're also not feeling monotonous as an entrepreneur, because I know that sometimes that can leave people feeling stifled. And then I would say every week I also do like a little quickly recap report for myself. I am the boss of myself. We're all the boss of ourselves. And I'm like, all right, what did I actually get done this week? And so being able to kind of take into account, I did my dishes. Hell yeah. I
That's
sent
a win.
an invoice. I got a report done. I mean, we underestimate all the things that we do as women in our life, and I seriously take account for all of it. So just to recap, calendar, seriously, planner, artist date, making sure that there is like definitely something creative in the books. Exercise, I recently got a Fitbit, so that's helping me walk. And then that like weekly recap report, like, okay, what did I do? And not including paying your bills, taking care of your home, you know, taking good care of yourself. What do you guys think about that?
I love the weekly recap. Every week I sat down and I wrote, what did I do that worked? What did I do that didn't work? And what do I commit to never doing again? And, you know, not that never say never, like things are going to come up. But what I like about it is that it forces me to really look at the activities that I've spent my time doing in the past week to make sure that it's really giving me the traction that I want. So I love that weekly recap so much, Jaclyn, because I think a lot of times we get so caught up in what we need to do that we forget what we've done. And when we take time to reassess and to really look at all of our achievements for the week, we're much more likely to be like, all right, then I can have the weekend off. You know, all right, I can relax for a couple of days because look at everything that I've accomplished. And I think giving ourselves permission to relax is one of the hardest and most important things as an entrepreneur.
Well, that's if I left that part out accidentally, but I absolutely schedule relaxation in. And I used to never do that. I mean, and I ended up having really bad adrenal fatigue. And I went to an acupuncturist, and I've worked with a lot of doctors doing marketing before. And I know that rest in other cultures is really respected. Yeah. I mean, in Spain and Italy, Bri can talk about Italia. But you take a nap in the middle of the day. And in the United States, it's like, no. So schedule your rest and make sure you rest. Like on the weekends, I chill. And then the other thing, Thais, too, I wanted to say is like in your weekly recap, put down all the things that you don't give yourself credit for. Yeah. Who did you pick up the phone for that needed you that week? Did you do your laundry? You know, I'll put like I did this many loads of dishes in my dishwasher because as women, unless we put a high value of significance on something, we won't consider it worth the accomplishment of having achieved it. And in my book, as long as you're alive and breathing and healthy, everything that you do is an accomplishment.
I love it. And I think that the more that we can give ourselves credit for what we do, the more accomplished we feel, the easier we feel on ourselves. And like what you said, rest is so important. And I think that the mornings that I sleep in are the mornings I do more. And it's because I'm I'm giving myself permission to honor my body. And so one of the commitments that I've made last year was to not use an alarm. And I will not use an alarm clock in my life. And unless, of course, I have an early morning meeting that I have to make sure that I wake up for. But for the most part, I don't schedule my stuff till after 9:30. And I always wake up before then. But it has given myself so much freedom that if I have a late night one night, I don't have to have shame that I have to wake up at 7. Like, why am I creating such systems and structures in my life that don't actually support the type of life that I want to live and lead? So I love that you're talking about rest. I think that that's one of the things that we just don't talk about enough. And I know that Arianna Huffington wrote a book about sleep, and it's getting so much press. And it's not an innovative concept. It's not something that like brand new to the world.
People have been sleeping since the dawn of time.
Yeah, but the fact that this book is so successful is clearly an indication of how sleepless our society is, and that needs to change.
Yeah. Jaclyn, I have to say I love that one of the things you mentioned. So I try and do a weekly look back and look forward. What worked this week? What didn't work this week? What do I want to create next week? And I love the idea of adding in those other things, like, because, you know, I look at it strictly from a business point, but like what worked in terms of physical movement for me? What worked in terms of my morning routine? What do I want to celebrate in terms of who I was this week and how much heart I carried into my life? And I really like that new perspective. It's very different. And thank you. I plan on implementing it into my weekly regimen.
That's great. I love to hear it. I mean, I can't emphasize enough. It's like, what do they say that, the best personal development experiment you'll ever have is starting your own endeavor. And I think, all three of us have, I don't want to say like battle scars, if you will, but like I said, we're sharing with this new wave and generation of men and women who are launching businesses and being able to work for themselves. And Thais, I actually wrote down what you had said was, why are we doing this to ourselves? If our previous employers wouldn't have even done it to us in terms of like punishing ourselves or overworking ourselves. I mean, it's illegal for an employer to like require you to work more than 40 hours a week. And, my standard is, okay, 32, right? So Friday's like my flex day. Since I'm my own boss, I end up working more than that just because I teach at night and whatnot. But my other little system thing that I wanted to share too, and I don't know that this is true for everybody, but if you were at a 9-to-5 job, you're working for your employer 8 hours a day. And one of the questions I often ask, entrepreneurs or even some of my other freelancers when I consult with them is, are you actually working like 6 to 8 hours a day of billable time? And I think that's something to help people kind of keep in consideration too, because a lot of people block their time, maybe work a 4-hour batch here or a 2-hour batch there. And you might think that your time is adding up to 32, 40 hours a week or whatever you've designated as like your time that you want to work. And sometimes when people go back and do that audit, they find that they're actually not getting that billable amount. And so that's just something that I also had to put into my system to make sure that I'm at least tracking, okay, I might be working like, I work 12-hour days on Mondays and Wednesdays just because I teach, like I said. So I'm already over 40 hours a week. But how much of that time was actually billable to help me pay my bills? And that was one other thing I wanted to throw in.
I think that's so important. And we have to make sure that the things that we're doing are leading to the ultimate bottom dollar, right? I mean, if you're spending 5 hours on the blog post and none of your blog posts have ever converted, why are you spending your time doing it? If you're not enjoying it, then it's time for you to reevaluate. If you enjoy writing, then what can you do to monetize it in some way? And I don't want me to take away the mystique of entrepreneurialism, but if you don't make money in your business, it's just a hobby. And business does equal money. And there's no shame in that. I'm not saying to sell your soul, but it's important that we're looking at the activities that we're doing and making sure that it impacts the bottom line. Or is it worth taking a pause on that activity for for a while and reevaluating it later. And I think when I decided there are certain tasks that I was doing that was not benefiting my bottom line, and I wasn't even really enjoying doing it, I gave myself permission to not do it for just a week. Because at the time I had, I was like, oh my God, I have to do this sort of thing. I'm a business owner. And when I gave myself permission to not do it for a week and I experienced such lightness around it, I realized that there's probably other things that I feel like I have to do that aren't even impacting my bottom line. So why am I doing it? And so thank you so much, Jaclyn, for bringing this to the conversation. And the other thing I would love to know more about is, what do you do to really disconnect from your business? Because it's so easy, even when we're not working, to be thinking about work and talking about work and
just like popping open our email on our phones because it's right there.
Exactly.
Or Thais and I are very famous for saying like, okay, I'm signing off for the night. And then like continuing to text each other for the next 3 hours about business stuff.
So what do you do to help you fully be present with the people around you and disconnect from your business when you're not working?
Oh my. So first, like I shared, when I first started out with my business, I worked 7 days a week. And I knew that that was a short-term thing. I knew that I was just trying to get some momentum. And I remember being able to say, I'm doing this right now, short-term, because there will come a time where I won't have to work at all on the weekend. And I'm proud to say that time has been about 2 years, and I've had my business for 6. So it was also like a choice for me that once you fall into that habit of becoming a workaholic, it's a really hard habit to break.
Mm-hmm. Preach.
But I would say that at about, 2 years ago, while I had my business, my grandparents passed away, and that started to kind of like awaken me to this idea of, I was able to take a month off and be with my grandmother. She was transitioning to the next life, and spend the remaining, 4 weeks of my grandfather's life with him. I think being present when you see 2 people leave this earth, there is no greater gift that you will receive. Not everybody will be able to see like 2 people. You might see people be born, but you may not see people die. And I've seen 3 people in my lifetime die. And it was I used to be terrified of that. I was like, oh my God, this is going to give me a heart attack. How would I ever handle something like that? And I would say that woke me up to be like, you know what? It's admirable that I have the responsibility to want to work on the weekend, but I'm going to be that person one day. And what do I want to be flashing before my eyes? I certainly don't want it to be me with my freaking phone, 3 inches away from my eyesight. So I would say that, the first thing I actually did was started tapping into, well, what am I passionate about besides work? And, being outside in nature was one of those things. So making sure that I at least was like doing something on the weekends to connect in nature was huge. Giving myself permission. So first identifying the passion, second, giving myself permission and remembering, okay, I'm not trying to be morbid here, but I don't know when that time is going to come that I'm going to be passing on to the next life. And like I said, I want it to be filled with travel and adventure and romance and fun, not just me and my MacBook, although I love my computer. So permission was huge. And then thirdly, I think it was just presence. So you said something, Thais, that was like so critical and key. And it's like, are you present? And even just recently, I was in a yoga class and I'm there in the class doing my poses. I'm a big yogi. And in my mind, I'm wandering like, oh, I got to go work on my website redesign and I have to work on copy. And oh, it's so sunny out today. And all of a sudden the teacher's like, I know that you guys are here in class, but are you present? Are you present in your practice? Are you connected to your breath? And it was like, I was like, is this chick spying on my thoughts? Because how did she know my mind was wandering? And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm not being present.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a matter of also making sure that like when you are with the people who you are going to spend time with, that you turn that phone off and you put it in your purse, or you leave your laptop at home over the weekend while you go on a vacation.
What is this thing you speak of?
Blasphemy, Jaclyn.
Yes. I haven't got to the point yet of using like the app blockers or anything like that. Because, you can. But
I think it's called the self-control app I have. You can turn off like certain websites like Facebook, and it's amazing.
Oh my gosh, I got to do that for my mornings. But like on the weekends, seriously, that is my time. And it took me a long time to actually be able to, like I said, say that like it's okay for me to have that little bit of play. So connect to your passions, give yourself permission, and then be present. The world isn't going to end if you don't get back to an email over the weekend. Trust me, I have plenty of people emailing me, and if they're upset that I'm not getting back to them over the weekend, then I don't need to be working with them.
Whoa. Let's pause here, because I think that this is a really important point for all entrepreneurs. You determine your time. I've worked with clients who's like, well, I have a client appointment at 6:00 and I hate that I get, that I have to work at 6 p.m., but this is the only time that my client is available. And I'm like, no. You get to determine when you're available, and your client is going to have to make time for you around your availability. And when you say, when you give them permission to schedule their stuff at a time that's not convenient for you, you're believing their story that they're strapped to their time. And that's a story that I don't want to support my clients around. So for me, I only see my clients on Tuesdays, and I use a calendar scheduler, and I send it to them every month, and it's their responsibility to schedule their 2 sessions with me a month. And I give them my time, and that's it. And they will have to create a schedule around it. And if they were to email me, of course, and say, oh, I can't make it, I make exceptions, but I get to determine when I want to see my clients, and I get to determine the people that I work with. And I think, Jaclyn, that's such an important point, because I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we just say yes to clients because we're in lack, and we believe that we have to work with them, and then we hate working with them, and they're needy clients, and we don't like it, and we complain and grumble about it, but you've allowed it to be a part of your experience.
I think one of my best weeks ever as an entrepreneur was a week that I got to fire 2 of my clients and just be like, you know what, I'm at a point where this isn't working for me anymore, and I'm no longer interested in consulting with you. And it was such a powerful moment, and I feel like that was one of my first, like, wow, I'm a real entrepreneur now. Like, we get to choose who we work with. And I think exactly what you said about being in lack and just taking any client that comes your way because they're going to pay you is a really important thing to look at in your life. So thanks for bringing that up, Jaclyn.
Yeah.
Well, you guys also inspired an idea in my mind too that I think we can touch on. And the idea is that, like, we have a lot of business models. We're not short of looking at how other businesses run their operations, if you will. And it doesn't mean that because somebody else has that business model that you have to replicate and run your business that exact same way. This comes up with a lot of my clients when they talk about pricing, right? They're like, oh, well, someone's trying to negotiate a price with me. And I say, well, when's the last time you went to the hair salon and were able to negotiate how much you paid?
Seriously?
Or the doctor or the dentist.
Or anybody.
So here's the thing. The reason why we're giving permission, or we're at least open to it, and I think it's an important thing to touch on, the reason why we're like, oh my gosh, my client wants to meet with me at this time, and I want to try to like satisfy them, or this person has this budget and I really want to try to work with them, is this idea of like customer experience, customer service, right? So like we grew up in the generation where we didn't have all this computer stuff. Like when you called an 800 number, it wasn't like push 1 to talk to so-and-so. You literally got a live person. And I do think that there is something to be said for entrepreneurs taking a step back and saying, I have a customer who I really want to serve, and I believe in good customer service and good customer experience. And because they may not, be able to pay what I want them to pay, or they may not be able to schedule with me when I want them to, I still want them to be satisfied. And I think that it's like, okay, so how else can you deliver that wow? Or how else can you deliver that service that you want to provide while still maintaining your boundaries? And that's a really great, challenging question for us all to ask ourselves, because you may have a really awesome client who can pay you top dollar, who isn't going to be a pain in the ass, but literally just needs to hear, perhaps, although these are my hours and this is my availability, I'm willing to, because you're only available on this date, if you make a concession here, I'm willing to help you or do something extra. What that extra is totally up to you as the business owner. And it's not something that you have to necessarily do for every single person. But I do think this idea of intention and being heart-centered and like creating a really awesome relationship with our customers and having that like customer experience is where some of that gray starts to come up when we're like, oh, my time, the pricing, what do I do? So I just wanted to throw that out there for some food for thought.
No, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And I feel like we could talk forever about this. This is something we're both so passionate about, and you're just so brilliant.
Well, and this is just like, I mean, we just do this anyways, like the three of us. I mean, so one of the things after Jaclyn and I had our 6 a.m. dance party was that Thais joined us at Wanderlust, and we had tea, and we all just sat and talked for like an hour and a half.
It was magical.
This is like normal for us. These are the conversations we have with Jaclyn, and we're so grateful that you joined us today because, you know, we love you, and we wanted to share your brilliance with all of our people, and thank you.
Yeah. So tell us, where can people find you if they're interested in learning more about you, Jaclyn?
I'm in the middle of relaunching my website, but I've got a splash page up. It's my name, JACLYN MULLEN. That has all the links to my social channels and whatnot. Working on my free workshop that I'm going to be providing to anybody who subscribes to my list. And believe me, for those of you who are out there trying to launch a website or relaunch or working on your marketing and feeling fear and resistance, I do this for a living and I'm feeling it too. So
I love it.
Just wanted to share that as some words of encouragement. And I just wanted to really thank you, Bri and Thais, for having me on your podcast today. Everything you've been doing has been a labor of love. And I think a true testament to friends and bosses and just women doing it is that you bring the people up who are around you as you grow. And ladies who are listening, I just have to say that these two women have helped me through one of the most difficult periods in my life this year. And there's no dollar value you could ever put on that. Like, I already feel like a success this year because I've been privileged to be invited on this podcast and be friends with you both. So thank you for the opportunity and for your friendship.
Aww. We wouldn't have it any other way.
#fact.
Love it.
Well, as usual, Amplifiers, you can catch us every Monday on iTunes. You can find the rest of our podcasts at bit.ly/beamplified. Be sure to download, subscribe, rate, and review if you like what you hear. We have more epic interviews coming up for you every Monday from here on out. So join us, and thank you so much. And don't forget to be amplified.
Woo!